I'm just going to be doing like a quick sketch of this scrunchie. I'm doing this pretty regularly to improve my observational skills and how I mark in values. Currently you're just seeing me identify where the light source is and fill in the dates before I get into just roughly putting down the shape of the scrunchie. I wanted to do this video to sort of introduce you a bit more into my artistic style and how I create, some of the thoughts I have while I'm creating as well. I learned this technique, I think I had done like a crash course at I think it was like the London School of Art in London Bridge, and they had basically told us that you can often get the angles of an object accurately by tilting your pencil and like shutting one eye, just sort of tilting it and then matching that to your paper. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just tilting my pencil, seeing the angle at which the scrunchie slants, and then trying to replicate that onto my paper. I'm marking that in. I'm putting down a few shapes like rectangles and triangles, just sort of marking in the shapes, the points at which the other shapes kind of come out. I think this was one of the first like sketches where my angles and my understanding of tone felt like they were improving. Oftentimes I will do a sketch and just feel like, what the fuck have I just created? But this one wasn't too bad. I did think that there were some similarities to the real life one as well. Here I'm just sketching in a few more rectangles and squares. But here I end up marking out the shape a little bit more clearly, seeing when the curves happen, just defining the shapes a bit more as well. You know, one of the things that my art teacher in high school had told me was that when you are doing observational drawings, I think the percentage was like 80% of your focus and your attention should be in the object and 20% should be on your drawing. And I think I've always taken that, you know, quite seriously. And I think during this process I definitely remember just staring at all the intricacies of the scrunchie and trying to replicate that as best I could. She also told me like not to use the eraser as much. I think that's also like another lesson that I've carried on. I mean, I think there's something quite pretty and raw about leaving your unfinished lines beneath the finished product. It just sort of adds character to your sketch. I also feel that I enjoyed creating this scrunchie a little bit more because scrunchies itself are quite forgiving. I mean, they're quite messy and their tones are kind of all over the place, so there's no sort of pressure to get it perfect. Whereas when I'll do a simple painting of like an orange, but the tonal contrast and transitions are quite clear and defined, when I get it wrong I just feel horrible. This sketch sort of ended up being a little bit more forgiving, and I think that's why I enjoyed it. I also thought that the scrunchie was quite interesting to create just because there's a lot of fluidity and movement. Here as well, at this point, I end up demarking where the highlights and the shadows would be. So there's sort of circles that I'm drawing as well, just to sort of help me prepare for the shading aspect, and just starting to incorporate the values of this as well. Here I just start by blocking out. There were so many lines around this dark part that was getting a little bit confusing to determine what was dark and what wasn't, what was part of the scrunchie and what wasn't, and so demark the darkest part of it just to help me visualize the tones better. What I start with whenever I sort of mark out tone is that I shade the whole thing in one sort of neutral shade, and then kind of work from the mid-tones to the darkest tones and the mid-tones and the high tones as well. Marking like the mid-tones, the tones at which it becomes a little bit more transitional. I think I learned that from John Singer Sargent. I think I was studying his techniques, and I think he said to always start, especially with oil paintings, to always start from mid-tones and then work up or work down. I think I've just sort of carried that on with my creativity. And then I like work in like the darker tones as well. I think I did about 2 rounds of this shading. So the initial one is just kind of getting the mid-tones in, and then the second one is just defining those highlights and darker aspects of the scrunchie too. Sometimes it can be quite like hard to kind of mark in tone. I feel like sometimes my eyes play tricks on me, and other times I feel like I can get the tone correct completely within my eyes, but then to translate that into a written or drawing response is sort of the other challenge. I also feel as if another thing that this taught me is to be intentional with the angle at which you shade. I think that if you are shading horizontally, I don't think it would do it justice by all of a sudden shading your object vertically, and I think it could create a bit of a clash that isn't appealing. You know, sometimes it might benefit in that it would just intensify the darker aspects of it too, but more often than not I just think it's not very harmonious. Then I come in with this iconic yellow pencil, because this one is just a little bit sharper and darker, and I think the sharpness of a pencil can definitely help sometimes with intensifying the dark aspects of a sketch. And then I'm just doing exactly that. I'm just sort of intensifying the darker aspects of the scrunchie and trying to deepen those areas of tone a bit more. think I was doing that thing that I mentioned where I was trying to do vertical sketches on horizontal, then realised it just didn't look very appealing. Yeah, marking out like the really dark parts here as well, specifically underneath the fold of that scrunchie. I'm sort of studying Rembrandt at the moment in line of my project progress at City and Guild University, and I'm slowly learning the importance of having to like learn and study light. And you know, he was definitely a master of light, and if you see some of his portraiture, he's very trained in how he diffuses light across his subjects and his portraiture. So yeah, I just think that he's fantastic, and I sort of aspire to have my value work like his. And yeah, that's sort of the end of it, and that's the finished product, and it did take me some time, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed listening and watching, and I hope you sort of learned something from this, and thank you ever so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!